Welcome to Africo Tales. The air hung heavy and humid over the Lagos cemetery, a shroud thicker than the expensive black aso-ebi worn by the elite mourners. White tents, grand and pristine, strained against the Hamatan wind, their silk flags snapping like whispers of forgotten secrets. Beneath the most lavish of these, a golden casket, polished to a blinding gleam, floated above an open grave, its edges freshly cemented. Inside lay Judith Anderson, CEO, Titan of Anderson Holdings, queen of the 3 towering monoliths that pierced the Lagos skyline on Victoria Island. Her face, a pale canvas, spoke of an unnatural stillness, cotton wool pressed into her delicate nostrils. Her husband, Williams, a man whose tailored suit could buy a small village, stood beside her, a folded silk handkerchief pressed to eyes that shone with a suspiciously dry sorrow. The pastor cleared his throat, his voice a drone against the city's distant hum. And 2 grave workers, grim-faced, moved to lower the casket. But then a voice ripped through the mourning rites, raw and untamed, like a lion's roar tearing the fabric of a false peace. "Stop! Don't bury her!" Every head snapped, every phone lifted, poised to capture the spectacle of truth battling the seat beneath the unforgiving African sun. A ripple of shock convulsed through the opulent gathering, cameras tilting wildly as murmurs turned to gasps. From the back, a man, a phantom woven from dust and neglect, carved a path through the bewildered crowd. His brown coat, tattered and worn, billowed around him like a cloak woven from hardship. His wild, matted hair and overgrown beard a stark contrast to the perfectly coiffed heads surrounding him. A heavy, dirty bag, bulging with the remnants of a life lived on the fringes, sagged on his shoulder. People recoiled from him as if he carried a contagious storm, their expensive fabrics brushing away from his ragged touch. "Who is this madman?" a whisper snaked through the silence. "Just a beggar from under the bridge," another muttered, contempt lacing their words. But the man, Benjamin, held an unwavering gaze. His hand, though trembling, pointed a finger like an accusing spear directly at the golden casket. "She is not dead," he thundered, his voice cutting through the humid air. "I said, do not bury her." 2 security guards, muscled pillars in black, moved to intercept him, their faces set in grim determination. But Benjamin, with an unexpected agility, sidestepped them, his tattered coat lifting like prophetic wings in the wind. He stopped at the very edge of the ceremonial mat, his gaze sweeping over the shocked faces before him. "He is the bridge boy who took care of me while I was in a coma." Judith's voice cut through the shocked silence, this time carrying the weight of real power. Williams Anderson stiffened, his carefully constructed mask of grief cracking into a rigid mask of fury. "Get this vagrant out," he snapped, his voice sharp enough to draw blood. "Sir, you will respect the dead. Judith is my wife, she is gone, and we will bury her in peace." The mourners stirred, a confused sea of disbelief, as the pastor lowered his Bible, his fingers trembling, and the grave workers paused, their ropes still in hand, caught between the solemn duty and the unsettling pronouncement of a man who looked like he had nothing left to lose but the truth. Benjamin's hand rose again, firm and steady this time, his finger unwavering as it pointed at the casket. "She is not gone," he repeated, his voice now a chilling whisper that carried across the hushed crowd. "She was given a substance, a bitter draught that slows the breath, cools the flesh, and fools the eye. She looks dead, but she is not. Give her the neutralizer, now!" A collective gasp rippled through the gathering, the word neutralizer whispered from stunned lips. Confusion warred with a terrifying flicker of doubt in the eyes of the onlookers. Cameras zoomed in. A reporter leaned forward, notebook poised. William's face contorted with uncontrolled rage. "Enough!" he snarled, turning to the guards. "Remove him, now!" But Benjamin stood his ground, his chin lifted, his eyes deep as ancient wells fixed on Williams. "Williams, you know what you did. And Dr. David knows too." The name fell like a stone into still water, and every eye swiveled to Dr. David, Judith's esteemed family physician, who stood a few paces away, his stethoscope tucked neatly in his pocket, his lips pressed thin. He looked at Benjamin with the guarded apprehension of a man staring at a locked door that held a dangerous secret. "Pastor," Williams commanded, his voice sharp with desperation, "continue the service." The pastor hesitated, his fingers fumbling with the pages of his Bible, the solemnity of the moment fracturing. Benjamin took one slow, deliberate step closer to the casket, his eyes softening as he looked down at Judith. "Madame," he whispered, a tender plea, "hold on, you are still here." Then his voice rose clear and strong. "Check her mouth, touch her wrist, warm her chest. She is there. I heard the plan with my own ears. Williams spoke of a quick burial. Dr. David signed the papers. Please give her the neutralizer." The hush deepened. Even the tents seemed to stop flapping, as if the very air held its breath, waiting for justice. The suffocating silence stretched, only broken by the distant hum of the city. Then, from the first row, a woman, regal in purple lace, stepped forward, her hands trembling, her eyes fixed on the golden casket. "If there is even a chance," she began, her voice quivering, "we should check. Is it not so, my people? A child cannot be sleeping while the mother suffers." Her words, a moderate echo of an ancient proverb about communal responsibility, resonated with a deep, unsettling truth among the mourners. "That is not necessary," William snapped, beads of sweat glistening on his forehead despite the cool breeze. "We did everything. The doctor confirmed." His protestations, however, only fueled the growing tide of suspicion. "Let them check," someone called from the crowd, their voice firm. "What will it cost? Just a few minutes?" Another voice joined the chorus, and soon a wave of murmurs transformed into a unified demand. Heads nodded, eyes narrowed at Williams, and even the security guards looked unsure, their loyalty wavering under the collective will of the people. Dr. David cleared his throat, forcing a smile that did not reach his terrified eyes. "This is ridiculous," he stammered. "Grief is making strangers speak nonsense. I examined her thoroughly." Benjamin turned to him, his gaze gentle but unwavering, like the unyielding spirit of an African elder. A painful silence descended, the kind that vibrates with anticipation and dread. Then Judith's aunt, her gele tight and neat, her eyes brimming with tears, stepped forward. "I am her aunt," she declared, her voice firm, carrying the weight of family and tradition. "If there is one small thing we can do, we will do it. We cannot abandon our own." Her words shattered the spell of indecision. Two women moved. Then a young man in a black suit, with the respectful grace of a son, placed his hands under Judith's shoulders. The grave workers, their ropes momentarily forgotten, stepped back to create space. Together, with a tenderness that defied the grim setting, they lifted Judith just enough for Benjamin to slide his folded coat beneath her neck. Up close, Judith's face seemed to be merely asleep, her lashes long shadows against her pale skin, the cotton wool a stark white against her dark complexion. "Please remove the wool," Benjamin requested softly. Slowly, the aunt nodded, and with fingers as gentle as a mother's, pulled the cotton free. The air seemed to stir, to breathe again. From his dirty bag, Benjamin produced a small brown vial, ancient and weathered, looking as though it had seen countless journeys. He held it up for all to see. "Neutralizer," he announced, his voice imbued with the power of conviction. Her body was slowed by something bitter. This, he promised, will walk her back from the threshold. Williams lunged forward, a predator scenting its prey escaping. But two mourners, men hardened by the city's ways, quickly stepped between him and Benjamin. "Let him try," one declared. "If it fails, we bury. But if it works, then what?" William spat, his face twisted in disbelief and fear. "Then we thank God," the aunt retorted, her eyes sharp as a blade. Dr. David's jaw clenched, his silence a confession. "Do not put strange liquid in her mouth, doctor," the aunt warned him, a challenge in her voice. "If you are so sure she is gone, this will do nothing. Let him try." All eyes settled on the small vial as the sun, as if in divine affirmation, slipped from behind a cloud, its golden rays resting like a warm hand on the casket, on the open grave, and on the man in the tattered coat, who in that moment looked like hope incarnate. Benjamin knelt, his hands now steady, forged strong by purpose. He twisted the vial's cap and dipped the glass dropper, collecting a single precious bead of liquid. He turned to Judith's aunt. "Please, help me open her mouth." With a soft sigh, a aunt gently slid a staple at the corner of Judith's lips, ever so slightly parting them. The young man in black lifted Judith a little more, and Benjamin leaned in, the entire crowd leaning with him, held captive by the extraordinary scene. Williams trembled, his voice cracking. "If you do this, But his words died in his throat. Benjamin held the dropper above Judith's mouth. "One drop," he whispered, a prayer more than a command. "Come back, madam." He squeezed. A single clear drop fell, landing on Judith's tongue. The world held its breath. Benjamin counted, his voice a low hum. 1, 2, 3. Nothing. 4, 5. A shiver of wind rustled through the tents, a ghost of doubt. 6. Benjamin's hand trembled. He raised the dropper for one more drop. "Don't you dare!" Williams roared, lunging forward, his face contorted. The aunt lifted her palm, a silent but formidable barrier. "Stay back." Benjamin squeezed. The second drop fell.
And in that tiny space between the drop leaving the glass and touching Judith's tongue, a sound, faint as a butterfly's wing, crawled up from Judith's chest. Was that a cough? The drop touched Judith's throat, moved, a ripple of life. Her lips parted, and then the cemetery air erupted into absolute chaos. Screams, shouts, prayers, gasps, all crashing together. Phones tilted wildly, desperate to capture what no one could believe. Judith's hand twitched, her lips parted with a distinct, undeniable cough. Benjamin's eyes burned with fierce hope. "She's coming back," he cried, his voice trembling but sure. "I told you she's alive." The aunt clutched Judith's wrist, her face radiating pure joy. "She's warm! Lord have mercy, she's warm!" she cried. A woman collapsed to her knees, chanting prayers of thanksgiving. But Williams, his face a mask of primal fury, plunged his hand into his jacket pocket. The glint of something small, metallic, caught the Lagos sunlight. "Stay back," he roared. His eyes wild, spittle on his lips. "She belongs in the ground. Do you hear me? In the ground."
Two men in black suits lunged at Williams, but he shoved them away with desperate, unexpected strength. The crowd surged backward, mothers pulling their children close, as the pastor dropped his Bible, his voice cracking with fear. Benjamin, however, stood his ground, his ragged coat brushing the grass, his beard shaking with the wind. His voice thundered again, stronger than before, resonating with the ancient power of truth. "Look at her, Williams. Look at your wife." Everyone turned, and there it was. Judith's chest, weak but undeniably rising and falling. Another cough, louder this time, burst from her throat. Her eyelids fluttered like heavy doors struggling to open, and the crowd gasped as one. The aunt's voice sliced through the noise, a joyful cry. "She's alive! She's alive!" Judith's lips trembled, and a hoarse whisper escaped her. "Why?" Her eyes half open, glassy and confused, focused on the man looming over her, the husband who had condemned her. Her voice gathered strength, filled with raw pain. "Williams, why?" In an instant, William's strength drained away. His hand dropped, the metallic object slipping from his fingers. It clattered onto the concrete beside the grave, a small syringe, filled with the cloudy liquid. Gasps rippled through the mourners. The guards, no longer hesitant, pounced, pinning Williams to the ground as he kicked and screamed, "No! She was supposed to be gone! She was supposed to be—" His words were cut off as the guards twisted his arms behind him. Sweat drenched his face, and the mask of grief he had worn melted into naked rage. All eyes swung to Dr. David. The doctor had stepped backward, his face drained of color. He tugged nervously at his collar, sweat sliding down his temple. I pronounced what I saw. I thought she was gone." Benjamin's voice cut sharp through the air. "Liar! You helped him. You signed her death, knowing she still lived. The fly that refuses to heed warnings ends up in the grave with the dead." Judith coughed again, stronger now, and struggled upright with the aunt's help, her hair tumbling loose, her skin damp with sweat. Her eyes red and fierce, locked on Williams. Tears spilled, but her voice shook with power. "What did I ever do to you?" she cried, her words cracking the silence. "To deserve this?"
Williams froze in the guard's grip. Judith's voice rose, trembling with anger and sorrow, yet laced with the unyielding strength of a true matriarch. "I gave you power. I trusted you with a branch of my empire, an honor most men only dream. Of. I loved you despite my wealth, when others only saw my pockets. And this is how you repay me? The crowd erupted in murmurs. Some wept, others shook their heads in utter disbelief. Judith's gaze shifted to Dr. David, who stood rooted like a guilty tree, a shadow of the respected physician he once was. "And you," she spat, her voice laced with the sting of betrayal. "I built your hospital. I gave you a car. I lifted you, when you had nothing. How could you betray me with him? A hand that feeds you, you do not bite." Dr. David stammered, his lips fumbling for words. I... But the truth was already clear, etched in his sweat and his silence. Judith's strength faltered and she swayed. Benjamin was at her side in an instant, steadying her with gentle, calloused hands. His voice was soft now, stripped of thunder. "Easy, madam. You are safe." She turned to him, her eyes meeting his. They were filled with tears, but beneath them was a glimmer of fierce, raw gratitude. For the first time, she saw past the ragged beard and tattered coat, past the urban beggar they had all dismissed. She saw the man who had saved her life. "Who are you?" she whispered, her breath shaky. "Why did you do this?" Benjamin lowered his eyes, his voice rough as gravel. "Because I knew the truth," he said. "I heard him yesterday, in his luxury car, under the bridge where I sleep. He spoke of a quick burial, of silence, of how the empire would be his. I couldn't let it happen. Not again." The mourners drew closer, hanging on his every word. Judith clung to his arm, her body trembling, her breath shallow but steady. Her voice cracked as she spoke. You saved me. You gave me back my life." Williams screamed again, thrashing against the guards. "She should be mine! Everything should be mine!" But his cries fell flat, drowned out by the prayers rising from the crowd, by the sobs of those who had loved Judith, by the furious glares turned his way. Sirens wailed in the distance. The police were coming. Benjamin, still kneeling at Judith's side, lifted his head toward the approaching sound. His eyes burned, not with pride, but with something deeper, the sorrow and memory of his own, broken life, weighing on him like chains. Judith noticed. She touched his hand weakly. "Stay with me," she whispered. "Don't leave my side." As police vehicles rolled into the cemetery gates, their red lights flashing against the marble tombstones, everyone turned to watch the end of one chapter and the trembling beginning of another. Judith Anderson, thought dead, now breathed again. And the man who had dragged her back from the grave, the homeless stranger they had all ignored, was about to change everything. The courtroom was a beehive, overflowing with a nation gripped by the unfolding drama. Every seat was taken, every corner crammed with people, from business magnates to ordinary citizens, eager to witness the trial that had blazed across every headline. Outside, television vans lined the streets, cameras flashing as anchors whispered into microphones. "Billionaire Judith Anderson rises from the dead. Husband and family doctor arrested in shocking conspiracy." Judith herself entered. Slowly, supported by Benjamin on one side and her aunt on the other. Her steps were unsteady, but her head was held high, a beacon of defiant resilience. She wore a plain black gown, devoid of her usual glittering elegance, yet her presence commanded the room. Gasps rippled as she sat, her eyes fixed on the accused. William sat in the dock, his face pale, his eyes cold and hard. Gone was the mask of grief. Now his lips curled in disdain as he glanced at Judith. Beside him, Dr. David was a picture of collapse, his head bowed, his hands trembling, sweat darkening his shirt under the bright courtroom lights. The judge, a stern woman with silver hair and sharp glasses, banged her gavel. "This court is now in session. The case of the state versus Williams Anderson and Dr. David Afery. Charges: attempted murder, conspiracy to murder, and medical malpractice." The prosecutor rose, his voice firm and cutting. "My lord, What we have before us is not a simple matter of greed. It is the cold-blooded plot of a husband who sought to bury his wife alive, aided by a doctor who betrayed his oath. Their aim was to seize control of her empire, billions in assets, companies that feed families across this nation. But for the courage of one man, this wickedness would have been sealed under the soil. The truth, like a persistent river, will always find its way to the sea. Many eyes glanced at Benjamin, who sat quietly at Judith's side, his coat now washed, his beard combed, though his face still bore the scars of hardship. He looked down, uncomfortable under the sudden attention. The prosecutor turned to Williams. "Do you deny plotting to poison your wife with a slow-acting compound designed to mimic death? Do you deny instructing this doctor to pronounce her dead, prematurely, and rush her burial?" Williams leaned forward, his voice chillingly cold. "I deny everything. This is nothing but lies spun by a mad vagrant and a woman too weak to understand her own body's failure. My wife was dying already. I merely accepted it." Gasps filled the court. Judith's jaw clenched. She rose suddenly, her voice shaking, with righteous rage. "You liar!" she cried. "Look at me, Williams. You put poison in my food. You forced my doctor, my friend, to swear I was gone. You tried to bury me alive like trash." The judge's gavel struck sharply. "Order in the court!" But the electricity in the air was uncontainable. The prosecutor lifted a small vial, sealed in evidence. "My lord, this was retrieved from the syringe found beside the grave. Analysis proves it is tetrodotoxin, a paralytic toxin capable of slowing the heartbeat, freezing muscles, masking breath, making the victim appear dead. This was intentional. This was no accident. And yet, this doctor signed a death certificate." All eyes turned to Dr. David. His face collapsed. He sobbed openly, his words tumbling out. "I was forced. He threatened me. Williams said if I didn't help, he would ruin me. He said I would lose my hospital, my family. I swear I only signed because I was afraid." Judith's face darkened. "Afraid? You let him put me in a coffin. You let them lower me into the earth. You betrayed your oath and me, a loyalty more sacred than any gold." Dr. David buried his face in his hands. "Forgive me, Judith. Forgive me." The prosecutor turned to the judge. "My lord, we have the poison. We have the syringe. We have the testimony of the victim herself. And we have the witness, the man who risked his life to speak the truth." Benjamin froze as the prosecutor's hand gestured toward him. The entire court turned to face him. Whispers rose. "That's the homeless man. The beggar who stopped. The funeral." The judge nodded. "Mr. Benjamin Okoro, please step forward." Benjamin rose slowly, each step echoing in the silent hall. He stopped at the witness stand, his rough hands gripping the wooden rail. The oath was read. He swore, his voice low but steady. The prosecutor leaned close. "Mr. Okoro, tell this court what you witnessed." Benjamin lifted his head, his eyes scanning the hall. He swallowed hard. Then his voice rang out, calm but heavy with truth. "The day before the burial, I was under the bridge where I sleep. I heard a car parked nearby. 2 men were inside, Williams and Dr. David. They were arguing. I heard Williams say, 'The poison worked. She is cold already. Tomorrow we bury her before anyone suspects.' The doctor said he was scared, but Williams told him, 'Do as I say or you'll lose everything. Even the lion needs the jackal for its cunning.' I knew then that if I didn't speak, they would bury her alive. I waited at the cemetery. When they brought her coffin, I begged them to stop. They called me mad, but I saw her fingers twitch. I could not let them lower her in." He paused, his eyes moist. "I lost my wife and daughter years ago. I was powerless. Then, but not this time. Not again. The silence in the room was thick, broken only by the quiet sobbing of a few women in the gallery. Judith's eyes filled with tears. She whispered, "God bless you, Benjamin." The defense attorney rose, his tone mocking. "So we are to believe the word of a beggar? A man who sleeps under bridges? How do we know he did not imagine these words? How do we know he wasn't paid by my client's enemies to cause chaos?" Benjamin's jaw tightened. He stood taller. "I may be poor, I may sleep on the streets, but I do not lie. I have nothing to gain, only the truth to tell. Poverty may strip a man of comfort, but it cannot strip him of his integrity." The judge leaned forward, her face stern. "The witness has spoken with courage. Let the court weigh his words alongside the evidence." Williams slammed his fists on the table. "He's lying! They're all lying!" But his voice cracked, desperate, hollow. The gavel struck again. "Order!" As the trial moved on, one truth was clear. The mask of Williams had fallen. The empire he dreamed of was slipping from his grasp, and Benjamin, the man he would never have noticed in his richest days, now stood as the key to his downfall. And as Judith sat, her hand clutching Benjamin's, a new thought sparked in the hearts of all watching. Perhaps this was not just her resurrection, but his too. The trial of truth had begun, and nothing would remain the same. The trial stretched into days. Each morning the courtroom overflowing with reporters, magnates, and ordinary people who had come just to see Judith Anderson alive and speaking. Every evening, headlines blazed across Nigeria. From grave to courtroom, "Judith's shocking return!" Inside, the atmosphere was thick with tension. William sat stiffly, his once perfect suits wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot from sleepless nights. Gone was the smooth-talking businessman. He looked like a caged animal, pacing, snarling whenever a witness spoke against him. Dr. David, in contrast, grew weaker with every session, avoiding Judith's eyes, his shoulders bent as though carrying the crushing weight of his betrayal. On the fourth day, the prosecutor called Judith's personal driver, Chick, a large man with honest eyes. "My lord," Chick began, his voice steady. "On the night Madam collapsed, I drove her to the hospital. She was struggling to breathe. But when we reached the gate, Dr. David told me to leave, that he would handle it privately. I begged to stay. He refused. 2 hours later, he told us she was dead." The court gasped. Judith covered her mouth, tears streaming. "I knew something was wrong," Chick bowed his head. "Madam was weak but not gone. I should have fought harder." The toxicologist next presented charts and slides. "The substance found in the syringe is called tetrodotoxin. In low doses, it mimics death, slows heartbeat, freezes muscles, masks breath. Without advanced equipment, one could easily mistake the victim for a corpse. It was intentional. This was no accident." The room fell silent, the weight of the evidence pressing on everyone. Finally, the judge turned to Williams. "Mr. Anderson, you have heard the charges, the testimony, the scientific proof. Do you have anything to say before this court passes judgment?" Williams rose slowly, his face twisted, half fury, half despair. His voice cracked as he spoke. "Yes, I have something to say. I loved Judith once, but she loved her companies more than me. Everything was always about her empire, her billions, her power. What was I? A shadow in her house, a husband in name only. I was supposed to share in her glory, yet she treated me like a servant. A man who carries water on his head does not break it for another's thirst." Judith flinched as though struck. The audience murmured, stunned. Williams's voice grew louder, his fists shaking. "So yes, I wanted it all. I wanted what was mine. If she had to die for me to live as a man, so be it." Chaos erupted. Shouts, gasps, cries of outrage filled the court. The judge banged her gavel furiously. "Order! Order!" Judith's tears spilled freely now. She stood, trembling but strong. her voice rising above the noise. "You fool! Love is not stolen. Respect is not forced. You had everything. My trust, my home, my life. But your greed drowned you. You tried to kill me, and now you have killed yourself." Williams's eyes burned with madness. "I regret nothing," he roared, as guards surged forward, shackling him as he screamed curses. Dr. David broke into sobs, collapsing onto the floor. "Forgive me, my lord. Forgive me, Judith. I betrayed everything I swore to be. I deserve death." The judge's gavel thundered once more. The hall fell into tense silence. Her voice was firm, unshaken. "This court has heard enough. Williams Anderson, you are guilty of attempted murder, conspiracy to murder, and greed of the highest order. You are hereby sentenced to life imprisonment with hard labor. May your chains remind you of the life you tried to bury." Williams screamed as the guards dragged him away. "It should have been mine, all mine." The judge turned to Dr. David. "And you, Dr. David Afori, trusted with life, but dealing in death. Your betrayal of your oath is unforgivable. This court sentences you to life imprisonment as well. You will never again hold the life of another in your hands." Dr. David collapsed into his chair, too broken to resist as police carried him out. The gavel struck a final time. Court dismissed. The hall erupted, some clapping, others weeping, all buzzing. With the weight of history, reporters rushed out to spread the verdict. Judith, exhausted, sank into her seat. Her body trembled with relief and pain. She whispered, "It's over." But beside her, Benjamin shook his head gently. "No, madam, it is only the beginning. You have your life again now. What will you do with it?" She turned to him, her eyes soft, her lips trembling with gratitude. "I wouldn't be here without you. You have no home, no rest. Yet you gave me both. Benjamin, you saved me." Benjamin looked away, his voice quiet. "I only did what I could not do before. My wife, my daughter, I failed them. But this time, I could not fail. When the drum calls, the dancer must answer." Judith touched his hand, firm and warm. "You did not fail. You were my miracle." Around them, people gathered, trying to shake Benjamin's hand, clapping him on the back, praising him. He had been invisible for years, a shadow on the streets. Now he stood in the light. The man who stopped a burial, the man who saved a billionaire. Judith rose, still holding his hand. "You will not return to the bridge tonight," she said firmly. "From this day, you walk with me. If I lived again, then so will you." Benjamin's throat tightened. Tears welled in his eyes, but he nodded silently. For the first time in years, he felt seen. And as they left the courtroom together, Judith, her aunt, and Benjamin at her side, the crowd outside roared like a storm, cameras flashing, voices chanting his name. "Benjamin! Benjamin! The man who stopped death!" Though chains had closed on Williams and David, new doors were opening, doors that neither Judith nor Benjamin had ever imagined before. The battle for justice was won, but the journey of redemption had only just begun. The heavy doors of Judith Anderson's mansion opened to a new season of life. The house that once smelled of morning now breathed fresh air, its corridors filled with sunlight and hope. But behind the glow, the scars of betrayal lingered. After the trial, Judith invited Benjamin to stay at her estate. One evening, she led him into her private study. The room was lined with mahogany shelves, books stacked in neat rows, a single lamp casting a warm glow. Judith poured 2 glasses of water and gestured for Benjamin to sit. His hands shook slightly. For a long time, he stared into his cup, searching for courage. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and raw. "Madam Judith, there's something I've carried alone for years. Tonight, I must say it." Judith leaned forward, her eyes soft with concern. He swallowed hard. I wasn't always like this. I was once a man with dignity, a software engineer, a husband, and a father. But one day, everything collapsed. I lost my job. My wife packed her things, and she vanished with my daughter. She left only a note. His voice broke. A note telling me the child I raised, the girl I called mine, wasn't my blood. Judith's eyes widened, tears springing to them. Benjamin pressed his palms together tightly. The betrayal destroyed me. I wandered the streets, unable to breathe, unable to live. I slept under bridges because hope abandoned me. But yesterday, under that bridge, I overheard Williams. He was making phone calls from his car, planning to take over your companies after you were buried. His words froze my blood. That's why I ran to the cemetery. That's why I stopped them. A stranger's. Pain can remind one of their own. For a long moment, silence filled the study, only the faint ticking of the clock audible. Judith's hands shook as she reached across the table and clasped his. Benjamin, she whispered, tears streaking down her cheeks. You carried all that pain, and still you risked your life for me. Do you know what that means? Benjamin's voice cracked. It means maybe I still have a reason to exist. In the days following his confession, Judith refused to let Benjamin slip back into the shadows of her mansion. She saw something in him, not just a man who had saved her life, but a mind sharpened by hardship and loss, a spirit tested by fire. At first, Benjamin resisted. Madam, I am no longer the man I used to be. Let me serve you quietly in the background, he said one morning as he helped carry files from her study, but Judith shook her head. You will not hide anymore. You have given me back my life. Let me give you back yours. We rise by lifting others. So Benjamin began helping with small duties in Anderson Holdings, carrying files, checking schedules, organizing reports. He moved with humility, keeping his head down. Yet, little by little, his hidden brilliance surfaced. One afternoon, during a tense board meeting, the company's directors struggled with a corrupted presentation file. Panic spread as investors waited impatiently. While others fumbled, Benjamin quietly stepped forward. In minutes, he reprogrammed the system and restored the slides. Gasps filled the room. Where did you learn that? A director asked in disbelief. Benjamin hesitated. I was once a software engineer, before everything fell apart. Judith's eyes softened with pride. She rose and announced firmly, From today, Benjamin is no longer a helper in the background. He is my special advisor, and his counsel will guide this company. What the eye does not see, the heart does not grieve for, but what the mind remembers, the world will benefit from. The board members exchanged looks, some skeptical, others intrigued. But no one could deny the calm authority in Judith's voice. For the first time in years, Benjamin stood tall. No longer a nameless wanderer, he was a man reborn, and with his input, Anderson Holdings was never the same again. Judith and Benjamin grew closer. They spent evenings in the study, talking about life, faith, and second chances. She admired his honesty, his unpolished wisdom, his sincerity that cut deeper than diamonds. For the first time since her betrayal, she found her heart stirring with a quiet hope. Judith wished he might love her, not as the billionaire the world saw, but as a woman whose soul had been bruised and was seeking comfort. Yet Benjamin never seemed to notice the silent longing in her eyes. One afternoon, as they strolled in the garden, Benjamin spoke with unusual excitement. Judith, I want you to meet someone. Her name is Juliana. She is kind, gentle. She makes me smile again. Judith's heart clenched. She forced a smile, even as her chest ached. She had hoped, foolishly, that Benjamin might see her as more than a friend, but reality stood firm. He loved another. That night, Judith cried alone in her room. Yet by dawn, she resolved her pain into strength. If he cannot be mine, then I will support his happiness. True love seeks the beloved's joy, even if it brings pain to one's own heart. When Benjamin proposed to Juliana months later, Judith insisted on sponsoring the wedding. "It is my honor," she told him, her smile hiding the bittersweet truth in her heart. The wedding day was beautiful. The garden was decorated with white roses and golden drapes, a celebration of new beginnings. Benjamin stood tall in a navy blue suit, his eyes glowing as Juliana, dressed in an elegant white gown, walked toward him. Judith watched from the front row, her eyes glistening. Though her heart once longed for him, she felt peace seeing him happy. When they exchanged vows, she clapped with genuine joy, whispering to herself, "This is what he deserves. Love, laughter, a new beginning." Months after Benjamin's marriage, fate surprised Judith too. At a charity gala, she met George, a businessman known not for wealth alone, but for his humility and compassion. He admired Judith not as a billionaire, but as a survivor, a woman of unyielding spirit. Their friendship grew into something deeper. George brought back laughter into Judith's life, and for the first time since her near-death experience, she felt whole. When George proposed months later, Judith said yes. At her wedding, Benjamin and Juliana sat proudly in the front row, clapping as she walked down the aisle. This time, there were no tears of regret, only gratitude, as the two souls, once broken, found their own paths to healing. 1 year later, life blossomed again. Benjamin and Juliana welcomed a baby boy whom they named Jonathan. Around the same time, Judith and George celebrated the birth of their baby girl, Eleliana. One golden evening, they gathered in the mansion's garden, the babies cradled in their arms. Benjamin rocked Jonathan gently while Judith held Eleliana close to her chest. Tears filled their eyes as they looked at each other. They remembered how close death had come, how betrayal nearly buried them both. Yet here they were, alive, surrounded by laughter, holding the promise of a future in tiny, innocent hands. Benjamin raised his glass. "From ashes to dawn," he said softly. Judith smiled, whispering back, "Yes, from ashes to dawn. Where there is life, there is hope, and where there is hope, there is a future." But one name was never forgotten: Williams. In prison, Williams was a broken man. The arrogance that once fueled him had crumbled under the weight of iron bars. Life behind walls gnawed at him, and every night he replayed the moment he watched Judith rise from the coffin. He began writing letters from prison, begging for forgiveness. At first, Judith ignored them, but the letters never stopped. They grew humbler, soaked with regret. "Judith, I was blind. Greed consumed me. If I could turn back time, I would kneel at your feet and beg 1,000 times. Please forgive me. Let my story be a warning to others." 10 years later, on the 10th anniversary of Judith's survival, she shocked the nation. At a grand event where her family, Benjamin, Juliana, and their children stood beside her, she announced, "10 years ago, I nearly went to the grave because of betrayal. But today, I choose not to let hatred bury me again. I forgive Williams Anderson." The hall gasped. Some clapped. Others murmured in disbelief. But Judith's eyes were firm. "Forgiveness is not weakness. It is freedom. If my survival is to mean anything, it must teach us that love, not vengeance," writes the final chapter. Holding a grudge is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. And weeks later, Williams was released after 10 long years. He walked out of prison, a frail man, his once proud face lined with regret. He had nothing left, no wealth, no family, no power. In a tiny rented room on the outskirts of town, he lived quietly. Whenever Judith appeared on television, smiling, With George, laughing with Aleliana, he would sit alone, tears running down his face. He whispered to the empty walls, "Greed destroyed me. Let my mistake teach others what I failed to see." Back at the mansion, Judith and Benjamin often sat in the garden together with their spouses, watching their children play. They spoke not of betrayal anymore, but of hope, of the profound power of communal harmony and the wisdom gained from trials. Judith would smile at Benjamin and say, "We lived through death, and now we live for life." And as the sun set behind them, painting the sky with golden fire, their story stood as a testimony that even from the grave, hope can rise. That from betrayal, love can bloom. That from ashes, dawn will always come. If you enjoyed the story, then like, subscribe, and share this story with your loved ones. Also, tell us in the comments where you are watching from.